It's Slate Night, the Film Fan Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Corey and Mason.
Hello and welcome to Slate Night, the Film Fan Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Mason Schmidt, here with my best bud, Corey Knudsen, as we get ready to drink beer and talk about movies. Today we'll be discussing what films we've seen lately, what new releases are on the horizon, as well as providing some updates on some physical media releases and latest notable developments in the world of movies. But first, Corey, how have you been? And second, what will we be drinking today?
Happy Groundhog Day, my friend.
Is that today?
It's today.
Oh, shit. Did he see the shadow?
He saw it. So 6 more weeks of winter, I think.
All right. Well, we don't really have snow here.
Yeah, that's true. Punxsutawney Phil.
He's a dad.
Dude, yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah. He's a little, two little kiddos.
First time, I guess.
That's cool.
That's noteworthy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, man. That's shout
cool.
out to Groundhog Day, the movie.
One of my favorite Bill Murray movies.
It's hilarious. Murphys. Harold Ramis directed it. Andy McDowell.
I had a crush on her watching that movie.
Margaret Qualley's mom, which
I forget about that.
I kind of learned that recently. So I don't know. Shout out to Groundhog Day. But yeah, our winter here has been pretty chill. So we'll
just
see.
Cold as shit.
Just
yeah.
cold. Anyways, what we're drinking today is Supra Deluxe. It's a premium lager made by Modist Brewing, who I think we've had some other stuff from them before. Maybe?
I couldn't tell you.
I kind of forget. It all meshes together. Modist Brewing's out of Minneapolis. This is good though. We've been sucking it down while we've been doing some show notes, and it's grown on me for sure.
Yeah, it's not too bad. The can is really interesting. I showed my wife the can when I bought it, and she was like, "That looks like a battery for something." Like it looks like Elon Musk made this. Like the logo of it, it's very like sleek. And I can see why she said it looks like a battery. Just it's a very interesting beer, and that's honestly the reason why I grabbed it off the shelf. I was like, all right, that looks interesting enough. All right, it's from Minnesota. Sweet, we'll do that. And I'm also impartial. I'm like, I want a lager because IPA is still scary.
And it's like a Japanese style lager, so it's kind of got some more like rice.
It's
like
very
hops
light colored.
Yeah,
this is just a beer review now. We don't want to talk about movies. But yeah, it's very. I don't know. The aftertaste is something interesting for me to try and get over while we suck down a couple of them throughout the duration of the show. But
hell yeah.
Anyway, what we've seen lately. Last week we talked about the opening of the film Companion, written and directed by Drew Hancock, who announced is to be writing a remake of The Faculty, originally directed by Robert Rodriguez. I think starring Josh Hartnett back in the early 2000s or late 90s, whenever that came. I never saw it either. I just know Stuckman really likes it. The film starring Sophie Thatcher, Jack Quaid, Harvey Guillen, and Rupert Friend in a very small supporting role. Synopsis is a billionaire's death sets off a chain of events for Iris and her friends during a weekend trip to his lakeside estate. I got to see this movie. I was really excited to see this movie with my wife because that first trailer really sold me on it. I was like, hell yeah, this is going to be so fucky and interesting and weird and just wild. And then that second trailer came out and kind of showed us more about what the movie was like, really leading into what it was about, which kind of gave me some hesitation because I'm like, all right, so she's just a sex bot. That's why she can hold her hand over a flame, whatever. But I really loved this movie. Me and my wife both just were grinning from ear to ear and laughing nonstop. It's a very funny movie. One thing that we'll talk about later on is the director, Zach Cregger. He worked as a producer on this film, he also made the film Barbarian, which I've heard a lot of kind of conversation about that movie to coincide with the release of Companion. And it is very much a energetic, just shot in the arm in the way that Barbarian was, where Barbarian is more of a horror film, Companion is more of like a thriller, and I guess you could say there's horror elements, but it's really a thriller that's made me like belly laugh a couple of times. And the cast here is fantastic. Jack Quaid's kind of doing a similar performance to what he did in Scream 5. Sophie Thatcher continues to be just a generational talent. I loved her work in Heretic, not Heretic, if you watched last week or listened to last week's episode. Heretic, and also in The Boogeyman, which is a movie that is all right, but she's fantastic in it. Corey, where is your anticipation level for Companion?
Yeah, I did not see it this week, but yeah, that first trailer looked really cool, and then kind of like you, the second one, I was like, I'm not as excited, so it dropped my excitement a little bit. But I do want to see it just because Zach Cregger being involved. I love Barbarian. I think that movie...
underrated.
Yeah, and it also has, like, we've talked a lot about horror movies not being scary a lot recently. That movie has some scenes and, like, some visuals that actually like, freak me out.
Yeah.
And it also has Justin Long just being hilarious. It's just great.
Me and my wife have a rule that Justin Long never wins. Like, whatever movie he's in, he doesn't win. Unless it's accepted. he kind of wins and accepted. I love that movie about the shit university that they start. But Companion's a great film, very fun, very energetic, very inventive, and had a lot of cool and interesting ideas, especially kind of working around the kind of editable nature. That's not a thing. That's not a word. Customizable nature of this sex bot, and how she's able to kind of toy with eye color and voice and pitch and stuff like that. There's a lot of cool like ideas baked within this film, and some really cool shots of death and destruction. I don't know. I really love this film, and I can't wait for you to see it and for more people to see it. I know it's getting a lot of critic buzz, and I'm sure it's going to be a new movie that people are going to make their entire personality similar to the way Barbie came out, and they're like, Barbie, and just stuff like that. But
is this your favorite movie of the year?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's over Wolfman. My list right now goes Companion, Wolfman, Presence, and then there was a fourth movie I saw this year, but I can't even... Oh, Damned. The Damned. But yeah, it's been so far a pretty solid January of 2025, which isn't something that we can always necessarily say.
It's definitely been better than some previous years. Another one that I know we both saw, and kind of catching up on Oscar stuff, which we'll have a lot more of that as we go along, but Nickel Boys is kind of the big one that we both knocked out this past week. Nominated for Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay. This one's directed by Ramel Ross, who was also Oscar nominated for the documentary Hale County This Morning, This Evening. I think it was 2018 or 2019. This movie is about a friendship between two young African-American men navigating the harrowing trials of reform school together in Florida. And this is all happening during the civil rights movement. And this is a movie I didn't really know like a lot of the specifics going into it. I just knew that the kind of appeal of this movie was that it's filmed from the point of view of these two teens, which is who are played by Ethan Harris and Brandon Wilson. So it kind of switches between the two of them as far as the point of view. So a lot of POV movies the last couple weeks with this and Presence. Kind of interesting. But this is one that, I mean, obviously we're both excited for just because it was in the awards conversation. And I think this movie is good. I think it's a very solid movie. I think that it enlightened me on some aspects of history that I didn't know that much about. So I always appreciate that. I always love things based on true stories or like based on books just because I like to learn things. So this definitely was a movie that did that. I think the performances are all great, especially Anjanou Ellis Taylor, who was nominated for King Richard as well a few years back. She was really a great emotional punch in this movie. And I think that it works well enough. It didn't blow me away. It feels like a Best Picture nominee, that the nominee is kind of the win. This one doesn't really have a chance to win, I don't think. But it has it has some very powerful moments throughout, but overall I just didn't feel the impact as much as I wanted to.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. So I saw this actually right after we recorded last week's episode. I rushed to a theater to catch it, and the theater was like relatively packed, which was exciting. I think kind of with the Oscar noms coming out, everyone's kind of rushing out to see the movies that they barely have heard of until the nominations came out. But I enjoyed this film. I didn't love it. I think it's really ambitious in the way it's setting out to tell this story. And typically with movies where it's like kind of a unique perspective or a POV where we're seeing what is like a character seeing, kind of in Presence it worked for me. In Hardcore Henry it worked for me. I really like that action film. In this, it kind of, I feel like, detracted from what the movie was really trying to get across. I could see it working in some scenes better than others. There, like when there's just like small character moments or just interactions, I'm like, I feel like I could do without this. But there's one scene with Anjanou Ellis Taylor specifically where she's looking for Elwood, I think it's her nephew, and she's like, I'm here to give him a hug, but he's not here, so I'm gonna have to hug you, and you're gonna have to hug him, like pass it on, and you're gonna have to be Elwood right now. And like there are some scenes like that like really hit me, and I was like, wow, like fuck, this is really well done, and it's kind of getting to me. I also didn't know much about kind of this almost like a detention center for juvenile kids or kids that broke a law that's rather minor that they were just kind of shoveling black people off to just because like, hey, we can, and it's the 60s, which I think that this film does a lot of interesting things in terms of analyzing the time period in which this is happening. Like the civil rights movement has happened. Like there are things that are happening that shouldn't be happening. Like we're going to the moon but we're still having like modern day slavery. So I think that there's a lot of like ambitious notes that this film's trying to get across that really worked for me. But the style of it, the perspective kind of became a detractor in terms of like really allowing me to connect with like this character. Like we're seeing it through Elwood's eyes, but we see Turner, and I feel like in those scenes where I can see Turner on screen, I connect more with Turner as opposed to like Elwood as I'm Elwood's perspective. I love seeing Daveed Diggs in a small little kind of supporting role, especially towards the end. He's one of my favorite actors. But yeah, this film, I like what it had to say. I think it's very ambitious in what it's trying to say. Just the perspective thing kind of wore on me a little bit, to where I feel like it detracted from overall like how I felt, how the film resonated with me, basically.
Yeah, I'm very surprised this one didn't get a Best Cinematography nomination.
Yeah.
Because that's like a character in itself of this movie, and even if like I think we both kind of feel similar that it didn't work for us all the time, but you can't deny that like that is a crucial part of this movie, and like I think that deserved a nomination over some of the other things that did get nominated. So kind of surprising there.
Even if the style or the choice to be from a person's perspective was kind of distracting, what we were seeing didn't look bad. Like everything visually was stunning. It was just, all right, I need to be with this character, experiencing their pain or this moment at the same time as them, and seeing it through their eyes. It didn't always like click with me. But that hug scene will be a scene that I remember and think about a lot, because I think like if Anjanou Ellis-Taylor got nominated for Best Supporting Actress, that would be her awards clip. I feel like I like her performance was a warm hug in an otherwise relatively sad and depressing movie about our nation's past. Going back to another film nominated that I wasn't really planning on seeing, I didn't hear too much about, but then it got a Best Lead Actor nomination, also a Best Supporting Actor nomination. Another film about nation's history, but we're not going to delve too much into the politics of it, because I'm not going to sit here and agree or disagree with the views of the figures that are represented within this film. But the film The Apprentice, directed by Ali Abbasi, starring Sebastian Stan, who, like I mentioned, is nominated for Best Lead Actor, and Jeremy Strong, nominated for Best Supporting Actor, Maria Baklova, and Martin Donovan. This is kind of the film about 70s and 80s New York. Donald Trump is an up-and-coming businessman looking to basically just grow through real estate, and I really enjoyed the energy of this film. I think it's exceptionally directed by Ali Abbasi. I think it's such a engaging film. And the thing that really worked best for me, and Corey, I'll let you talk about it because I know you're more familiar with Jeremy Strong's work, but the thing that worked best for me in this movie is that dynamic between Sebastian Stan as Donald Trump and Jeremy Strong as Roy Cohn or Khan or whatever his name is. But their dynamic, their almost friendship, and how it kind of alters and grows throughout the film really worked for me. Corey, I know you like Jeremy Strong. I know you haven't seen this film quite yet, but I'm a big fan of it. Big fan. So I'm excited to see what you have to say about it.
Yeah, I've been wanting to see this one for a while. I'm just kind of waiting for it to like drop on some streaming service, hopefully soon. But yeah, I mean, I love this time period. Like, I love the 70s and the 80s especially. Just any stories that take place in that time, and like movies made in that time, I think are just super interesting. And yeah, I think this is one where a lot of people probably won't watch it because, well, it's the Donald Trump movie. I'm not going to see that because I don't like him. So I think that's, an important thing to try and separate the real life from the art, and even if you're not a fan, maybe check it out. I'm very excited to watch this one. So, but yeah, Jeremy Strong is great. I just finished season 2 of Succession. I've been watching through that show, and it continues to be one of the best shows I've ever seen, honestly, and I'm only halfway through it. But especially season 2, Jeremy Strong has such a great arc in the show, and he just has so many different layers to him, and he's really just such a strong actor that conveys so much emotion in a very subtle way, especially in the show. But yeah, this one, I mean, getting the couple nominations, even if it hadn't gotten nominated, I would still be very interested in this movie too. So yeah, definitely excited to check this one out.
The setting of like the 70s and 80s, just the way the film is shot, it feels like it was made back then. It's so true to the period it's portraying. Sebastian Stan is remarkable in this movie. I loved him in this movie. It was so engaging. I compared watching this film to watching films like Vice about Dick Cheney with Christian Bale in it, and Wolf of Wall Street, almost just kind of about like the excess of stuff. Again, I don't want to be too political. To try and ride the line, if you don't like Trump, I think that there's things in this movie for you. If you do like Trump, I think there's things in this movie for you. Like, I think it's a pretty down the middle movie. Like, I've heard a lot of things about, like, oh, this is the most controversial movie of 2024. I'm like, really? Like, after watching it, I'm like, I don't necessarily think so. I think there's some things that they could have taken out that feels like they were maybe trying to push a point. And there's things that they definitely probably could have put in. So I think that this movie is pretty just as best as it could objective. I'm sure people are going to say it's not because it offends them in some sort of way, whatever. But just the energy of this movie really sold me. And honestly, if Sebastian Stan, I don't think he has a shot at winning. I love seeing him get nominated for this. He had such a killer 2024. But if Jeremy Strong isn't at least in that conversation for like maybe top 3 of that category, he was phenomenal in this film. And he is a lot of the heart and soul of this film, especially towards the latter portion of the film, and you kind of more things are revealed about Roy Cohn. I really grew to appreciate their dynamic, and I think that this film is just wildly energetic and perfectly portrays United States 1970s and 1980s, even though I'm pretty sure this film was shot in Toronto. But regardless, I think it is so perfect in terms of how it represented its era.
Yeah, very excited to check that one out. Hopefully in the next couple weeks before the Oscars, I will be able to talk about that one. But speaking of another great Sebastian Stan performance, we got A Different Man, which you talked about last week. I finally got around to watch, and it's on HBO if you haven't seen it. And it is nominated for Best Makeup and Hairstyling at the Oscars. And again, stars Sebastian Stan and Adam Pearson. And yeah, I mean, it's an aspiring actor who undergoes a medical procedure to change his appearance. I forget what the actual like name of the physical condition is, but kind of a face transformation. And this movie, I mean, I know you talked about it already, but I actually really dug this movie. I liked it was kind of like a noir, like almost like, again, going back to like 70s vibe. Like, it felt very old school in the way it was made by Aaron Schimberg, the director. And I really dug most of this movie. I think it's the last like 10 to 15 minutes that they did some things that like hammered home points that I didn't need hammered home because I already understood.
Yeah.
Like, I already got it from what they were trying to say. But I think Sebastian Stan, again, is incredible in this. He won at the Golden Globes for this performance. And Adam Pearson is just so delightful in this movie. And it really is just your outlook on life and your perspective and just like the hand that you're dealt. And, how different people approach that. How some people are like, I'm going to just be so positive and be so cheery and warm and friendly to everybody, and then somebody else who thinks that they are, like, this is what I want. Once I get this, then I'll be happy. Once I get this, then I'll be happy, and that keeps happening over and over and over. And you see, compared to somebody else that's just like, you know what, this is who I am, and I'm very happy with that. So I really like that theme in this movie, and I really like the look of it too. It felt very grainy. It felt very old school. And I also really liked, I'm probably going to mispronounce this, but Renette Rensiv in this movie. She was the kind of the female like co-lead in this movie almost. She was really good too as Sebastian Stan's neighbor. So definitely a cool movie, and I think the makeup and hairstyling is good. I think some of the makeup looks a little noticeable at times, which may be a controversial take, but I don't know. But yeah, this one was really cool, and I'm glad I checked it out just because I think it's, again, a super strong year for Sebastian Stan coming out as like a very legit actor.
Yeah. And now that I've seen both the Sebastian Stan films, I'm okay with him getting a nomination for Apprentice over this. I kind of wish Adam Pearson would have gotten more love and maybe a nomination, because kind of what you were saying about, like, it perfectly shows the what am I trying to say? The distinct like difference between people where they were dealt the hand in life and someone's like, no, I'm gonna play this hand, and someone's like, reshuffle. Like Sebastian Stan kind of wanting to, I don't like the way I am. I see an issue with it, but there's no issue to be seen. Like, I think that there's a lot of poignant things said in this film. It feels almost like a Annie Hall, like it feels like it could have been made by Woody Allen if Woody Allen had more edge and less like, I'm gonna diddle you. So I like
oof.
Justin Tucker and Woody Allen. But I really do appreciate this film. It's not one that I'm like eager to rewatch, but kind of similar to what you were saying with the ending, especially where it's like I feel like you're kind of hammering home things that I already know I don't need. But aside from A Different Man, I'm happy that you were finally able to watch that. I caught up on a movie that you have spoken about previously, which is September 5 or 5th. The proper pronunciation is 5th. Sorry.
Get it right,
Directed by Tim Fellbaum, starring Peter Sarsgaard, John Magaro, and Liani Benesh. It's about the 1972 Summer Olympics in Munich, Germany, as the sports broadcasting branch of ABC is kind of saddled with this difficult dilemma of recording basically this terrorist hostage situation within the Olympic field, and they're trying to figure out how to best handle that in an ethical way of portraying the story in a objective way, but also not making this the story about the terrorists. This is a story about hostages being taken and not putting too much emphasis on what's on the terrorist perspective of it. This is a film, Corey, you really liked, and after seeing it, after I knew that you liked it, I was excited to see it. After seeing it, I'm like, I get why he liked it, and I think I would put this towards my honorable mentions for 2024 as well, of films that really just blew me away. It is such a concise 90-minute thriller newsroom. I love films about journalism, so the way that this film just handles basically within this newsroom and the content desk and all that, where they're at, it doesn't venture out too much far from that. And it's a lot of just hard decisions made very quickly by important people, and people just trying to do what they think is right and tell this story in a way that they think needs to be done, because there are people back home that are related to these hostages that don't know what's happening. So they are at the forefront of, hey, this is what's happening to your kid or your family member, your relative. I thought that this film was so powerful, the way it kind of deals with, all right, well, we need to break the scoop because we want to be first, but if we lead the way and we're wrong, what is the repercussions of that? And the way that this film works, it was so impactful. I left the movie and I was like, fuck, I don't want to talk to anyone right now. Like, I was just like kind of sad. I'm going to drive home without music in my car. Like, I'm not going to talk to anyone. And I get home and my wife's like, how was it? I'm like, oh, it was good. Like I loved it. Like, it was an awesome movie, but like to talk about it right after, I was like, oh yeah. And I started explaining to my wife. She's like, yeah, that's good. You don't need it. We can be done talking about it. Corey, I know you love this film. I'm really happy I got to see it. Do you have any other extra points that you haven't maybe touched on that you would want to, aside from John Magaro being phenomenal? Yeah. He's always in a supporting role, and to see him kind of really lead a film, I love that.
Yeah, he was great in Past Lives from a couple years ago. Really great supporting role, but. Yeah, I mean, again, I think I mentioned last week that I work in a newsroom myself, so just the kind of two things of like the ethical and moral decisions that you have to make of reporting on something. And there's a line in this movie where it's like, is it their story or is it ours?
Yeah.
And that's such a simple line, but a very profound one of like you were mentioning, you know, as a news station, like, our goal is to get the news first. We want to break the news. We want to be like to beat our competitors and to give the public this information that they need. But does that come at a cost of compromising somebody's life, somebody's personal safety? So it's just the dilemma that we've had talks about in our newsroom at my job almost weekly of like, can we say this? What words can we say? How do we phrase this thing so we don't get lawyers involved in this where they're suing us for something?
Yeah, there's a good point in the movie where they specifically have to look at the way they phrase something, because they don't necessarily have confirmation of it, and they're like, well, from what we're hearing, or like just stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, to just like step around or toe the line in such a way, I'm like, that is such a hard thing. I feel like, especially on the spot in a hot box scenario where you have to just delegate and do the thing, to be able to toe the line is just something that I'm like, wow, watching this movie, I'm like, wow, I really envy this guy that John Magaro is playing, because I'm like, you are just so good at being decisive and knowing what to do, and I'm like, God, I wish I could be like that.
Right. And I mean, yeah, that's the thing too, of just like knowing the sources that you're getting, because like at my job now, we typically like to have 3 sources tell us something if we're trying to break it. We can't just go off of one. Mm-hmm. But that's, again, a conversation in this movie where it's like, well, we have a source saying this, that this thing is happening. Can we say that? And again, do we want to break this news and beat all the competitors and tell the world that this is happening, or do we want to wait an extra 10 minutes and see if it's actually true? So all those discussions are handled really well in this movie, and it really does ring true just for like real life journalism, and I really appreciated that about this movie, and it deserved more Oscar nominations.
It definitely did. If this, again, and it's hard to not just throw too much hate onto Emilia Perez, especially with like current stuff coming up, but I don't think I like that movie, and I don't think it's as deserving as a Best Picture nom as maybe this movie. I think that this is such a just tight, well-made film. If Tim Feldbaum got a Best Director nomination, I'd have no issue with it with this movie. I think it's so well written. I think there are some very eerie and chilling moments just when you, and they've shown, and it's highlighted a lot in the trailer of just like the terrorists popping their head out or looking, or like the scene when they're like, they have a TV on in their room, and every single room in the Olympic Village has access to every news network. They could be watching us. Are they watching us tell their story? Do they know what's happening? And just, especially with kind of the final act and how it unfolds, it was just like, I have goosebumps. Every potential hair on my body is standing straight up. Like I just didn't want to leave that dark theater after it ended. I was like, fuck, I'm just going to sit here for a minute. But wow, yeah, what a film.
Yeah, very, very good. Definitely check this one out. It's still playing in some theaters, so go watch it because it is really great. Again, another movie that I could recommend to anybody. I think anybody would love this movie, and they would get something out of it.
Completely agree. I think anyone could get something good out of this movie.
Yeah. Now to the sort of spiritual sequel, I guess you could call it, to
From 2005.
From 2005, or I guess September 5th would be the spiritual prequel, whatever you want to call it. But I finally watched Munich, which came out in 2005, like you mentioned. It's a Steven Spielberg movie, which he is my favorite director of all time, and this is one I had not seen before. And it takes place after the events of September 5th. So after the Israeli hostages were killed, it kind of shows that in the first few minutes of the film. And then the core of this movie is really about 5 men that are chosen to eliminate the people that are responsible for that Black September massacre. And the movie stars Eric Bana, Daniel Craig in a pre-James Bond role, which, along like this movie and Layer Cake, are kind of like his two almost audition tapes for Bond, which is interesting to see. And then you have Ciarán Hinds and Jeffrey Rush in supporting roles as well. Really, really good in the movie. And this is a Spielberg movie that I have never heard anybody talk about. Nobody has ever said, wow, Munich is great. And they should be talking about it because this movie is awesome. It is a little bit of a longer movie. It's like 2 hours and 45 minutes or something. But it is, again, like, it's a thriller in a different way than September 5th. It takes a little bit more of an action route in some scenes, but it's these guys that are tasked and like given a list of people that they need to take out. Like, here's 11 guys that were responsible for this thing. Take them out. And they get this list, and each guy that they kill, they ask questions like, what did this guy specifically do? Like, what was his role in this thing? And they're, the kind of heads of the groups are like, we can't tell you that, it's classified. And so they're killing these people, and like they feel like they're doing something good, but every time that they kill somebody, then a couple weeks later, another person rises up into that same position that person just had and doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. And there's a really great conversation at the end of this movie between Eric Bana and Jeffrey Rush, where Eric Bana is kind of bringing up that point. He's like, I feel like we killed these people and then their roles just got filled within a second. And Jeffrey Rush is like, well, I still clip my fingernails even though they grow back. And
damn.
And it was just a really like simple line, but it's like, wow, that it's just different perspectives, and you see the toll that it takes on these 5 men as they're doing it. And there's so many different groups involved in this too, where it's like the KGB and the like PLO and all these different groups that are getting involved in like kind of the backstabbing and double crossing and all that. So it's a really engaging movie. And I really, really dug it. It also has one of my favorite edits I've ever seen in a movie. It's when Eric Bana's on a plane and he's having like a flashback or kind of vision. It's incredible. But yeah, this movie I would recommend to anybody. I think it's one of Spielberg's most underrated movies, along with Catch Me If You Can. Both of those movies are great. And yeah, this one was nominated for 5 Oscars: Best Picture, Director, Adapted Screenplay, Editing, and Score. So it was kind of fun watching this one after September 5th and doing a little kind of within a small amount of time, just watching both of these moments in history.
I've never seen Munich. The only person I've ever seen talk about it is John Campea. He mentioned it, I think, on one of his daily recordings. But I've never seen it. I've always been interested, but it's mostly the runtime that's deterred me from it. But now that I'm kind of coming off of September 5th and I have that movie in my back catalog and I have that fresh in my mind, I feel like now is probably the best time for me to potentially visit this movie, go back and watch it. And then I love Daniel Craig. I love Eric Bana. This is a stacked cast. I didn't realize Jeffrey Rush was even in this, but that is also a fucking bar, he says, too. Jeez. Yeah. I've always been interested in it. This might be the best time for me to go back and revisit it, because I feel like now that, like, nominated for 5 Oscars, picture, director, screenplay, editing, and score, and I feel like it's not so, like, widely talked about nowadays, so it's like, It's wild seeing movies from 20 years ago that have accolades just fucking stacked and have a stacked cast as it does, and about an important moment in history, and it doesn't really get thrown around in conversation. Also made by one of the most prolific directors in film history. So it's like, yeah, for you to say it's underrated, it has to be for it to be made by Steven Spielberg, and the fact that no one's talking about it today, but with what it's pulling or bringing to the table with cast and awards accolades and what it's about, I really need to sit down and watch this movie, because it's a glaring, like, big hole in my Steven Spielberg filmography of the films I've watched of his. Also,
Eric Bana's best performance I've seen.
Aside from the Hulk?
Yeah, well, I was reading something that Spielberg saw Hulk,
and he was like, I want him.
Like, he actually didn't, which I don't think he's bad in Hulk. I think the script and the movies aren't good. Eric Bana, if he would have got a better shot, I think we could have been okay as Hulk.
I don't think I've ever seen Eric Bana be bad in a movie.
No, he's good.
Even Hulk,
yeah.
Nick Nolte, chef's kiss.
Wow. Hulk. When he turns into the big cloud at the end of Hulk, or whatever the fuck that is.
What an interesting creative decision to do that. But aside from Munich, which is now just going to add to my homework now after getting the Oscar noms, I went back and watched Black Box Diaries, which is nominated for Best Documentary Feature at this upcoming Oscars. It's about a journalist, Shiori Ito, investigates her own sexual assault, seeking to prosecute the high-profile offender. And the big thing in this film is just how slow that process is. This documentary, I probably wouldn't have watched if it hadn't been nominated for Best Documentary Feature. So sitting down, I was in a pretty good mood to watch this movie, and this movie is not about necessarily the happiest of material of watching this woman kind of relive her sexual assault as she looks to seek justice on the man that did it and caused it. She's trying to expose Japan's outdated judicial and societal systems, and that you could feel it in this movie. I really did like this documentary, and the story is a story that needs to be told, and it's a story that it's hard to, I don't want to say I enjoyed watching this movie, because it's not about enjoyable material to watch, but it's a very well done documentary. It does feel repetitive at times, but that is also the process for which Shiori Oti is going through as she's trying to get kind of recognition for what was done to her. And not only recognition, but like I said, justice. The way that Japan's kind of societal norms and also the judicial system, how slow moving it is, and how unsuccessful women are typically when they bring up sexual abuse allegations, how they're kind of pushed aside and ostracized for saying something. It's something that they are very rarely able to get put out and to win on. They never really get a lot of sympathy from others. There's a scene where she's coming out of a court case or out of a courtroom, and she's ostracized and yelled at by this other woman, like, you stupid, like, bitch, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you saying this? You're such a liar. And it's like, it's interesting to see a woman say that to another woman. And this film is really just about the trials and tribulations this woman's facing as she's trying to get someone on her side. And it's written, directed, starring Shiori Ito. It's such a well put together film, but like I said, it is kind of repetitive, which fits what it's about. But in terms of watching it as a viewer who is coming to this film with little to no knowledge or background knowledge of this, it did feel repetitive to me, and it kind of made it more of a daunting watch. But overall, I did enjoy it. Corey, I don't know kind of how you're looking to incorporate the best documentary feature into kind of Oscar homework if you're going to watch them. Are there any best documentary features that you're really eager to see? Are you going to see Black Box Diaries? What are you thinking?
I'm always a little bit slower to get around to like the documentaries and the shorts. I know you're going to watch everything that's nominated this year, which is awesome.
I've made it my mission.
Yeah, which I think is fucking awesome. I love that. I don't know that I'll do that this year. But this one and Sugarcane, which you talked about last week, sound interesting. And like, I certainly wouldn't be upset if I watched these just to kind of check them off the list. But yeah, there's always like a couple every year that I'm interested in. Like Fire of Love a few years back, I really, really liked. So I guess it's just kind of, I look at what they're about, and if it kind of is something I'm interested in, then I'll check it out. But yeah, this one, I mean, I'm definitely interested now after hearing your thoughts on it. But something that I caught up on from last year, which I was really excited to see, is Blink Twice, which is Zoe Kravitz's directorial debut. This is a loaded cast. Naomi Ackie, Channing Tatum, Christian Slater, Haley Joel Osment, Kyle MacLachlan's in this movie. It's just like it's just a lot of like older actors, I guess, or like actors that we haven't seen in a lot of big things lately kind of come together. And it's essentially about Channing Tatum playing a tech billionaire named Slater King, and he meets a cocktail waitress named Frida, played by Naomi Ackie, and he invites her to join him and his friends on this dream vacation to this private island, and strange things start to happen, and the reality of what's going on is questioned by a lot of the characters. This one was really cool. I dug this movie a lot. Yeah. I thought this kind of had some Get Out vibes to it. Like, you go to this location and you think everything's normal, sort of, at first, and then weird things start to unravel as it goes on. But I think, first of all, Channing Tatum is a great actor, and I don't know that he gets enough credit for, like, being a great actor, because I feel like he's kind of been, like, cameo in a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like this
Bullet Train.
This is the end.
Yeah.
It's just hilarious.
Awesome cameo.
But yeah, Bullet Train, like Hateful Eight, Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah,
so
he's small roles.
He pops up, but he's also great. Like, watch Foxcatcher. He's a great actor. But I thought he was like brilliant in this movie, and it definitely has a lot of different themes that it's trying to tackle in this movie, kind of domestic violence and kind of things related to that. And I think it touches on them all well enough. I don't know that it really like hammers home anything incredibly well, but I didn't need that specifically in this movie. I think that it is just really fun to like be on this island as they're like kind of partying and like just drinking and having fun, and then you start to get little clues and details and hints of weird shit that's going on there. And I had a lot of fun with it. I think the ending sort of undermines some of the messaging. It didn't like 100% ruin it for me, but I was like, I would have preferred a little bit of a different direction. But overall, this one was cool. I watched it on Amazon Prime, so you can check it out there.
Yeah, I saw this movie in theaters back in 2024. My mom really wanted to go see, I think Reagan was out at that time, and I'm like, I have no interest in seeing Reagan. I'm sorry, but I didn't say that to her. I was like, well, there's also this movie called Blink Twice that I really want to go see. Would you be interested? Like, Channing Tatum's in it. And she was like, oh, okay, yeah, we can go see that. And then, like, we watched it, and I could feel her, like, kind of squirming in her seat by me. Like, my mom is the sweetest woman on earth, but she is one of those people in theaters where she doesn't understand the volume of her own voice in a movie theater. So instead of, like, turning to whisper to me, she'll just loudly say, this is weird. And I'm like, okay, you could say that to me in a different volume. And she didn't love the movie. She was like, we came out and I was like, did you like it? She's like, it was interesting. I love this movie. I think it's a perfectly good thriller. It does have a lot of Jordan Peele kind of inspiration, I feel like, especially Get Out. It's fun to see Christian Slater in a role like this. I'm trying to remember back to the movie, but doesn't he lose a finger at one point? And just like his nonchalantness of it, like just like, oh yeah, fucking lost this guy too, and no finger. It's like, oh, okay, sweet. Channing Tatum's great. You and I were talking about like him just consistently hitting the vape, and like the sound of the vape in the movie was just like something like, wow, that's like scratching an itch in my brain that I didn't know needed to be scratched. But yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. I'm happy you went back and watched it, because I feel like, especially with us being so inundated with like Oscar films, documentaries, all that stuff that we're trying to kind of get through now, Blink Twice kind of feels like a movie to me where it could easily get forgotten, but I think it's definitely worth its weight in terms of just like, yeah, this is a good film. And it was a fun thriller. I think it does do a lot of things well, especially in terms of the themes it explores. Like what you mentioned about the ending, I didn't necessarily love the ending too. It felt a little too, I don't know, like hammy or just extra. It felt too tacked on. I didn't need it. It felt too clean cut. It feels like it was too easy. Like, this is the natural, easy way for this to go. I'm like, I wish you guys would have done something a little bit more interesting, or at least kind of reined it in a little bit. But overall, I like this film. I like the intrigue and just the questions that the film raises. So I'm really happy that you're able to sit down and watch Blink Twice. I also went back, again, more Oscar homework, watched Maria, directed by Pablo Larraín. He is the amazing director of Jackie and Spencer, and this film kind of completes his unofficial trilogy of prolific, almost tragic women and what their final days and what their lives were like. He also directed El Conde, which a film I really enjoyed from was it from last year, I think? And the cinematographer for that film also carried over to Maria, at which this film is now nominated for Best Cinematography. So no surprise there. But the film stars Angelina Jolie, Pier Francesco Favino, and Cody Smith-McPhee. It's about Maria Callas, who I didn't know much about, but she's kind of a famed opera singer, especially in like the 60s, 70s, and even back to the 50s, but lives through like the last days of her life in Paris as she kind of confronts her identity and kind of takes a interesting and more inventive approach in terms of how she looks back at her life. The film it's about a woman who was troubled and had really tragic upbringing, and now as she's kind of looking back at her life, she is taking, like, she knows she's short on time, and it's very apparent, and Angelina Jolie is so perfect in this movie. But there's an interesting thing where Cody Smith-McPhee's character is, I think, Mandrax. I think it's the drug that she was taking at the time. That's what the character's name is. So every time she takes this Mandrax, Cody Smith-McPhee shows up and kind of interviews her about her life as if he's making like a documentary about her. And through that, we get this framing device of seeing kind of the harder things that she lived through. And I really dug that, and I dug the framing device of doing that for a character to look back on her life. There's so many great performances. I love Pablo Larraín's work. Corey, I know you're a big fan too. I know you haven't seen Maria. Are you, I'm guessing, eventually going to see this probably before Oscars?
For sure. I may even watch this tonight. I was going to get up and watch it this morning, but then my shower was dirty, so I needed to clean that. And
I cleaned my shower yesterday. Nice.
Yeah, there we go. How about that?
Clean your showers on the weekends.
Yeah. So I ended up cleaning my apartment. But anyways, yeah, I am excited to watch this one. I like Jackie and Spencer a lot. And yeah, El Conde nominated for Best Cinematography as well. So I'm excited to see that cinematographer come back.
You can see a lot of the carryover between the films too.
For sure.
Once I was like, yeah, that is. Oh wow, no. There's a lot of black and white photography throughout this film when she's kind of recounting moments from her past life or earlier on, and you kind of see like, oh well, this does feel like El Conde.
Yeah. For sure. No, I'm definitely going to watch it. And yeah, I don't know anything about Maria Callas, but like I said earlier, I love learning about history and just figures in history. So this will definitely be one that I check out. And great to see Angelina Jolie in a great role, even though she wasn't nominated. You know, she's been nominated for some other, you know, critics groups and stuff. So great to see her back in the spotlight there.
She's phenomenal. There is a scene specifically between Maria Callas, played by Jolie, and her sister's basically just, hey, if you're going to write an autobiography, like, you don't need to apologize for things. The things done to you aren't your fault. And just like there's a good dialogue between the two of them that really hit home for me. I think it's an exceptionally well-directed film. In terms of this unofficial trilogy of like Jackie, Spencer, and Maria, Jackie is far and away my favorite. I love that movie. I think that is one of the most like aesthetically pleasing things to look at ever made. And Natalie Portman as Jackie Kennedy is phenomenal. And it was interesting because, again, I didn't know much about Maria Callas, but how much her story kind of intertwines with the Kennedy family. There are aspects of that are touched on throughout the film. But Jackie is my favorite of Pablo Larraín's, of this unofficial trilogy. And then then Maria and Spencer, they're kind of tied. They're very similar in terms of how they look at this character, and as this character is kind of recounting and analyzing the tragic aspects of their life that they've lived through and hope to move on into better things, or if they're looking down the end of their life and they're like, well, I did things good and I did things bad, or bad things happened to me. I really enjoyed this film. I'm excited for you to watch it and kind of see what your ranking of this unofficial trilogy would be. But I love Pablo Larraín. I can't wait to see whatever he ends up making next.
Yeah, for sure. I'll probably have my thoughts in the next coming weeks here. Continuing on into my Alphabet rewatch through this year. This week was the letter D, so I watched Deliverance, which I had never seen before, but I've owned the movie for a long time. It's directed by John Borman, who directed Exorcist II: The Heretic. You remember that one?
That's awesome. Huh? That screams quality.
Have you seen that?
No.
Oh, man. I did an Exorcist watch through before Believer came. Is that what it was called? Believer?
I think so.
Is that it?
The fucking...
The newest one?
Gordon Green one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Believer, which that movie was just
bland.
So bland. That was vanilla ice cream with no sugar. Like, that was just
If you're going to watch an Exorcist movie, watch the first and the third one.
The third one is my favorite, which is kind of a out there take. But
they're both great.
They're both great.
But yeah, so he directed that. But don't let Exorcist 2 diminish John Borman. He's done
so he's good.
Yeah, he did another movie, Hope and Glory, which was nominated for a bunch of Oscars. But this movie is essentially about the boys going down the river. Boys going on a canoe trip in this river in Georgia.
Just like hunting buddies? I've never seen this.
So they're like, this river in, I believe it's Georgia, is going to get like dammed. So they're going to blow it up and everything and build a bunch of shit on it. And Burt Reynolds is kind of this outdoor fanatic, and he's like, boys, we need to go on this canoe trip. Boys. He's like, we need to go on this canoe trip, like before this thing goes away, this like beautiful nature, and just like take a trip, have fun. And, shenanigans ensue as they encounter some backcountry hillbillies.
Shenanigans. Squeal for me.
Yeah, the only thing that I'd heard from this movie is the squeal, kind of gross, grody scene.
Referenced in Family Guy and South Park. That's the only thing I have that connects me to this movie.
That was me before it too, and it's a movie that I really enjoyed watching. I think mainly just for filming on location, like in, I believe it was like the Appalachian Mountains that they were filming. And
you say Appalachian?
Yeah,
that's how you pronounce that?
I don't know. I always say it because it's like Appalachian State, like that's the college. Appalachian. I don't know. I think either way. You're not the one to talk about
pronunciations of shit. Yeah.
So just shut the fuck up, all right?
What's the name of the river that they're on?
I think the Kalawasi is what it's called.
Yeah, it's a solid pronunciation.
So yeah, fuck you. Anyways, this movie also has the song. You've probably heard like the dueling banjos like that. That's kind of like where it was popularized, which I didn't really know. I think the song came out before, but this movie kind of made it big. But yeah, I mean, this movie was nominated for Best Picture, Director, Editing, and it really is just like a tale of survival along this river. It's not just the weird kind of rapey scene that you've probably heard from this movie.
When does that happen in the film?
I'd say like the midway point.
So there's like more of them like, let's get back in the boat.
Yeah,
let's go down the river after Ned Baby's been stretched.
I thought
let's keep going.
There's more to it, and I thought more of it was like they got kidnapped by hillbillies. That's what I thought this movie was. And it's really them, like, that's a chunk of it for sure, and a fairly big chunk. It matters a lot. Especially Ned Beatty. You just kind of see him like what am I going to tell my wife here? This is weird. But I mean, Burt Reynolds and John Voight, Ronnie Cox is the other of the four guys there. And it really is just like a visually beautiful movie, like as they filmed on this river, and it just reminded me of why I love 70s movies so much, especially like that's my favorite decade of movie making ever. Just because it was like before we start live. Yeah, we're gonna do it real. We're gonna do it before a lot of visual effects come into it. Like we have to film on location. And it looks great. And again, it's just a good tale of survival of these guys, and the toll that it takes on them as they're journeying down this river, and the repercussions of it, and kind of as it's wrapping up, like how they're going to tell authorities like what happened along the trip and like what information they're going to say and what they're not going to say. It's not like a top 100 movie for me, but certainly one that I'm glad I've seen just because I've heard so much about it. I've owned it on Blu-ray for such a long time, and one that I'm glad I have checked off of my list.
Yeah. This isn't a film, obviously, that I haven't seen this one. This is the one that I like, kind of aside from like Smokey and the Bandit. This is what I like link to Burt Reynolds' name the most, even though I haven't seen it. How are the performances kind of Burt Reynolds, Jon Voight? It has a stacked cast looking at it, and the sad things that happen to Ned Beatty in this film, but how are the performances in the movie?
They're great. I mean, Burt Reynolds, like I said, is kind of like the outdoorsy guy, and he's Burt Reynolds, who's kind of the macho guy.
Yeah.
But even he goes on a little bit of an arc throughout the movie where he's kind of has like a lesser role towards the back half a little bit, and Jon Voight kind of takes over, and Jon Voight kind of starts out as like, a little bit more of a hesitant guy, and then becomes a little bit more of a leader towards the end of the film.
Himself.
So yeah, it was interesting to watch that, and I don't know that I would like recommend this one to a ton of people. Just I think the subject matter, like some parts of it, they'd be like, I don't want to watch.
I feel like this is like every dad's like this is one of their favorite movies, or like uncles are like, oh, you seen Deliverance? Like, especially like living in the Midwest, this feels like a film that like a dude that lives on a ranch is like, yeah, fucking Deliverance is my shit. So I haven't seen it. I don't know. Should I be rushing to see it? Out of Deliverance and Munich, do I see Munich first? I'm guessing just based off the films that you've talked about.
I'd say Munich. Yeah.
Okay. Deliverance is always the one where I'm like, I feel like I'm missing out on something. Like everyone always references it, and it's kind of seen as being a classic in terms of just the time period of which it was made. But I've never felt like the urge to go back and revisit. So I don't know. Into one of the films I was, and I don't mean any sly to this movie, but least excited to see. It was nominated for Best International Feature, The Seed of a Sacred Fig. And I say I wasn't excited for this film only because it's runtime. 2 hours and 47 minutes. There are a lot of long movies that came out this past year. But this one has subtitles, so I was going to be reading a lot of it, which I have no issue with subtitles in films. Some of my favorite movies are foreign language, so you have to read subtitles. When people are like, oh yeah, I don't watch movies that have fucking subtitles, well, you're an idiot, and you should just walk off a very steep cliff. Which kind of goes for a lot of my family. That's bad, but whatever. Maybe fucking learn to read a little bit.
Take Bong Joon-ho's quote. Once you get over that like 1-inch barrier, you're going to be exposed to so many great movies.
100%. But I sat down in theaters finally because it's showing around us here in Minnesota. But I was able to get a ticket to The Seed of a Sacred Fig, which the theater was relatively like decently packed, which made me kind of excited. I got there early, so. Tangent, I got an AMC Stubs like A-list, the thing where you pay a monthly subscription, you get 3 free movie tickets a week, and you get a bunch of different perks. So I'm really like handcuffed to AMC because that deal is just too good to skip out on in terms of how much money I spend at the theaters. So I was like, fuck it, it's a great deal. But that handcuffs me to the 30-minute trailer fucking setup before every movie and their shitty popcorn, but whatever. But with The Seed of the Sacred Fig being kind of like a more like specialty artisan film, foreign language film nominated for best international feature, I went in kind of like, shit, do I need to get there like really early? Are they going to do their typical 30 minutes of bullshit trailers? They did. And I fucking got there early for it to watch 30 minutes of trailers before a 2 hour and 47-minute movie, which I'm not holding that as an issue against Seed of the Sacred Fig. This film is fantastic, and I'll talk about that. But AMC, again, one of the endless times we'll say this, fucking trim your shit. Settle down and just like, 3 trailers. That kind of fits the mood or the tone or where this film's coming from. Maybe match that a little bit. As opposed to showing me a trailer for Novocaine in front of this fucking film. What is that about?
Trim your AMC trailers. For the
theater.
My God. There's 3 of them.
AMC stuff. Thank you. And then fucking Nicole Kidman, I don't need to see her
I know
shit.
which theater on that.
I
get it.
Anyway, unneeded rant, but I'm pissed. So, unneeded rant for a film that I actually think was really phenomenal. I'm not going to even try to announce or pronounce the names for the directors and the actors within this film because I'm a white boy from the Midwest and I will horribly butcher these, and I don't want to give them any sort of negative kind of representation of who they are because everyone in this film is phenomenal. The performances across the board are perfect, and the direction is I have like no complaints about this film. It is 2 hours and 47 minutes, and I had a similar kind of reaction to it as I did with The Brutalist, where I walked out and I was like, I really liked that movie, but it's really long. With The Brutalist, I'm like, I don't know if there's much I would take out, if any. I think I like The Brutalist. I wouldn't take anything out. With this, I'm like, I feel like there's probably 20 minutes that you could trim up, and that this film would be a little bit more tight and be a little bit more concise with what it's trying to say within the film. If, like, instead of 2 hours 47, went to 2:27. I think that it'd probably work. I just don't know what specific scenes I'd cut out, which is, again, I'm like, something in there. The pacing didn't work for me. But regardless, the film is about an investigating judge named Iman, who is grappling with the paranoia amid political unrest in Tehran, Iran. And as this new appointed judge, with that new kind of role, he gets a gun, which he brings into his family home. And there's a lot of unrest within the family about having a gun, and randomly it vanishes. And he suspects his wife, and he suspects his daughters, and he starts to impose different measures on them that really just like strains all aspects of their family and just immediately makes them just a threat to him. Regardless, this film takes place during a lot of protests about women wearing hijabs in Iran. And again, that's nothing that I went into this movie really knowing a lot about. Again, I'm from the Midwest. I don't know about hijabs. I can't speak shit about hijabs, which is a wild sentence. But like going into this movie and seeing that desire for women in Iran to want to be able to freely express themselves. There are two daughters in this film. One that's a little bit more... she's looked at as being kind of the radical of the family because she wants to go to college, and she has a friend that's kind of potentially attending these protests, and her younger sister is like, I want blue hair and I want to paint my nails, and the dad's like, what the fuck did you just say? Like, no, you can't do that. And it was just like, it's such a culture shock watching this movie from like how our perspective in like Minnesota, just how things are, versus in Iran where it's like, no, you wear a hijab, you cover your head, this is how you act, you can't do this, you can't really express yourself. And I think that there's a lot of interesting and poignant things brought up within the film that I fucking knew nothing about. But I also really enjoyed to watch and listen and learn about. Like I said, I really like this film. It is exceptionally well made. I just think that you could probably tighten up the story a little bit. There's probably more in the beginning half of the film where you can kind of tighten it up, because that latter half, once it hits a kind of a point where they go to a relative, or not a relative, like a home within the father's family history. They go there as kind of a resort just to kind of hide away from all the happenings in Tehran. Once it hits that, the movies go. And it's just wild shit kind of going on. So I think that beginning half, you can tighten up a little bit. The very final scene didn't 100% work for me. It just kind of lost its impact a little bit. And I liked what they were doing. I liked what they were saying. And I think that, like I said, a lot of points brought up about just expression and just being able to go to college, and like a girl bringing up that they want to go to college in Iran, and the mom being like, well, like, you can't do that. Like, this is going to go bad. You need to cover your head. You can't be too expressive. You can't stand out. You have to be a wallflower, and you have to be set decoration. Like, you can't be a person. Regardless, this film, it floored me. I was so happy kind of early on when this movie was going. Like, it clicked for me. I'm like, oh, I'm really going to like this. Which, going into a 2 hour and 47-minute movie with a different language and having to read subtitles, if that doesn't happen early on, it can be kind of a slog, which this movie was not. It was such a well-done film. I'm so excited to see it in the Best International Feature kind of conversation. I still have more within that category to work through, but I overall really enjoyed this film. It's a good family drama and thriller that has a lot of good poignant moments and poignant points that they're trying to express and talk about. And they mentioned that this film is filmed in secret, but regardless, my mouth is getting dry. I need some beer. Corey, where's your anticipation at for A Seed of a Sacred Fig?
Yeah, I saw the trailer for this one before Nickel Boys, and it looks really good. And the international category is what I'm trying to watch more movies in.
Some of the best films every year are within this category.
For sure. And so, yeah, this one just looked really interesting to me as well. So we'll try and watch that one before the Oscars. Jumping into just a little TV roundup for the week. We didn't mention it last week, but Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, the animated MCU show that's kind of MCU adjacent, I guess. Sort of like X-Men 97, I would compare it to, I guess, of like not being directly in there, but an alternate universe of sorts. Which first 2 episodes dropped, And I didn't really plan on watching this, but then I just kind of saw it on there, and I'm like, you know what, I'll see it. And I don't have too much to say. Like, I think it's a fun animated Spider-Man show. Feels like, you know, some of the old like 60s show of just small scale Peter Parker in high school doing his thing, fighting criminals. You get some fun little, you know, you get Doctor Strange popping up, you get Norman Osborn, voiced by Coleman Domingo, who honestly, that was the highlight for me from the first couple episodes. So, yeah, I think it's fun. I'm excited to see where it goes every week, but it's not, like, anything groundbreaking, I wouldn't say.
No, this isn't, like, event television. Like, I wasn't planning on watching the show, and then I was just like, you know what? Kind of like with Creature Commandos, it's animated and it's brief. Like, fine, whatever. I'll sit down and give it a chance. Whereas Creature Commandos, I'm like, fuck, this is awesome. This I did really enjoy. It just does kind of feel like a revamp of all the basic Spider-Man knowledge we kind of all already know going into it. I've seen like critiques of like the animation. The animation works for me. I love talking about like revamped elements of Spider-Man. The opening theme music for the intro of getting that Spider-Man and the way that they like play on that, I loved that. I love his look. Yeah, it's nothing like groundbreaking the first two episodes. I do like what they did with Norman Osborn and how they lead into his introduction, kind of playing with the way MCU Tom Holland's Peter Parker met Tony Stark in his apartment. I was like, wow, I really like this. And I like kind of what they're doing, but it's nothing that like I think you need to rush out and see. It's just like good casual viewing, so I think it's definitely worth your time. And something I'll likely continue watching throughout. I loved X-Men 97, so that might be my favorite MCU Disney Plus show, aside from it's that and Loki. So Marvel Animation has worked for me, but I also skipped What If, so I can't really necessarily say Marvel Animation is killing it.
Yeah, this feels like a sort of What If season
Spider-Man.
of like What If Spider-Man. I am still, it's taken me so long. I'm working my way through the original X-Men animated show.
I forgot you were doing that.
Yeah, I'm on like season 2. My plan was to watch it all before X-Men 97.
Skip it.
I don't want to skip it though.
Skip it and go back, because I've started doing that. And because I've seen some of the original like X-Men show from the 90s, and I went into 97, and I loved 97. And that's made me want to go back and like finish more of it.
I know.
I think you should just jump on the 97 train.
I think they said they're doing a season 2 of X-Men 97. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm gonna try
and finish before
because I loved what I saw of the original animated show, and I thought it was fucking great. And I just need to watch all of that in the 97. So I'll get into that someday. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about it maybe when that is coming out
in like a year.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving into new releases for this week, we got on February 7th, 2025, a film I'm super stoked for, Heart Eyes, directed by Josh Rubin, who directed a very fun whodunit mystery, somehow video game adaptation, which I didn't know about until after the fact, of the film Werewolves Within. Heart Eyes stars Olivia Holt, Mason Gooding, and Jordana Brewster. Synopsis is, for the past several years, the Heart Eyes killer has wreaked havoc on Valentine's Day by stalking and murdering romantic couples. It looks like a pretty standard slasher, which I love. The slasher genre is one of my favorites. I love Thanksgiving. I love the Halloween films. I love My Bloody Valentine. I love Black Christmas, which I don't know if you can really argue that that's a slasher. I think it is, but some might not think it. I'm super excited. I wish that this was coming out on Valentine's Day so I could see it on Valentine's Day, but me and my wife will definitely be seeing it Friday. Corey, where's your anticipation for Heart Eyes?
I'm excited for this one. Yeah, I think I'm going to try and see it in theaters. I like Mason Gooding a lot. He's been good in the past couple Scream movies.
Yeah, he was in Booksmart, right? He was like the guy that they were crushing on.
Yeah. So we got that one, sort of in the same like title theme of like love themes.
It gets hard. Like I keep forgetting or keep mispronouncing. Like Heart Eyes or Love.
Because last week we had Love Me. This week we have Heart Eyes, and then we also have Love Hurts, which is directed by Jonathan Eusebio, who is a kind of like fight coordinator, stunt coordinator for a lot of movies, including some of the John Wick ones. It's got Ke Huy Quan, which he's been on a tear. Everything Everywhere All at Once, Loki season 2. He's love to see the comeback. Mm-hmm. But it's essentially like a John Wick or Nobody type story with Ke Huy Quan, who he's out of the life and then he gets pulled back in and he has to fight people. And that looks fun. Like, I don't know that I'll see it in theaters necessarily, but like him just like Ke Huy Quan, like he does a lot of great stunts, and like he did it for Everything Everywhere All at Once. So eventually I do want to watch this movie and see it. So Mason, what are you thinking about Love Hurts?
I didn't finish watching the trailer. I'm not like super excited about this, but I do love Ki Hee Kwan. I think an action-oriented movie, just based on what he did in Everything Everywhere All at Once with that fight scene, I'm like, yeah, this could definitely work. And I'm kind of like linking it to the Novocaine movie, to mention that again for the second time this episode, but like there's seem like similar concepts of just like bombastic action with a character that's either taken out of it or is just has something special about them. So I don't know. I'm not too terribly like sold on it. I don't think I'm gonna rush out to see it. If I hear great things, then maybe I'll visit it in theaters. But I think that this will likely be a streaming release for me that I'll watch. But
Marshawn Lynch is in it.
Okay, he's awesome.
80 for Brady.
He's okay. Aside from 80 for Brady,
he's great in that movie.
Okay, sure, but like he was also in Bottoms. He played like a gym teacher or something. I forget his specific role, but he was so funny in that movie. So honestly, Marshawn Lynch, that actually adds to my anticipation for this movie. So maybe I will go see it. Ariana DeBose, obviously coming off of one of her best performances ever in Kraven the Hunter. So
Woo!
Yeah, Lord knows that she'll probably be good in this one then too. But I can't wait to see, hopefully, Marshawn Lynch in more movies to come. If I see Love Hurts in theaters, that will be TBD. But Marshawn Lynch, just keep pumping shit out.
Hell
I
yeah.
love you. But a little bit of a physical media roundup. What we purchased lately, to coincide with my absolute surprise, shock, adoration for the film The Apprentice, I bought that on Blu-ray and now have that as part of my collection. Again, I am a victim of recency bias, so watching a Pablo Larraín movie, it's immediately me going on Amazon to look at what Pablo Larraín movies are available and which ones I don't own. Which Jackie I used to own, but with moving into an apartment with my wife and having to downsize, I've gone back and started to rebuy things. I've purchased the movie The Matrix maybe 4 times in my life. I've purchased Happy Death Day and sold Happy Death Day and then rebought it maybe 4 times in my life. Jackie, I rebought Jackie on Blu-ray this past week, so my additions to my collection are The Apprentice and Jackie both on Blu-ray. Corey, anything from you?
I didn't buy anything this week, but I do remember finding Jackie, the Blu-ray, at a Half Price Books with the slipcover that has like a kind of Velcro almost opening on the slipcover, which movies just don't do anymore. But it's really fucking sexy. It looks
hot,
great.
yeah.
I love it.
The slipcover is like it has such a texture, like it's good,
it's smooth. I don't know what it is, but it's awesome.
The packaging of these films really matters to me.
To both of us, both of our autistic fucking collecting whatever. It's like, yeah, we care about this stuff, It doesn't matter.
You were the
else.
first person I ever met when the first time we went movie shopping to look at like the spine of Blu-rays and be like, well, is that plastic going to be an absolute just pain in the ass to remove or not?
Yep.
Like, is it adhered there?
100%.
Yeah. So that's what I knew. I was like, yeah, he's a good friend.
But yeah, there's a lot of stuff actually coming out this
Big
week.
week.
We've got Wicked, Best Picture nominated for 10 Oscars. Juror number 2, which we both really liked. A Real Pain. Werewolves. We got a 4K Steelbook for Blade, which is tight. Then we got a Criterion for Punch Drunk Love, getting a 4K as well. So yeah, big release week. This is kind of the on again, off again weeks for physical. I'll definitely be buying Wicked and A Real Pain. If Juror number 2 is in stores, then I'll definitely buy that too, because I like that one a lot.
Yeah, I already pre-ordered the Steelbook for Wicked, and I will likely end up purchasing A Real Pain because I did really love that movie. That was in my top 10 from 2024. I would buy the 4Ks of Punch Drunk Love and Blade if I didn't already own like the standard 4Ks, I have a standard 4K of Blade, and then I have the Punch Drunk Love Blu-ray Criterion because that is my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie. But yeah, this is a big week. That, and then you have Frank Grillo's Werewolves just sitting in the middle of it. So
there it is.
If you want to go watch that movie, which I heard like the costuming, or not the costuming, the effects of it, the practical effects are pretty stellar. So if you want to go buy that, if that's your forte, please go support physical media, as it is something that is slowly, sadly dwindling, as Sony, I think, just announced that they're done making Blu-ray players as well, if not this past week, the week prior. And I'm just like anytime I see a news headline about like, hey, big studios stopping their production of X thing for physical media, I'm like, I'm just going to pretend that's not happening. Just going to keep scrolling. Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah, but moving into movie news, I'd rather talk about Alien Earth released a teaser trailer which kind of shows you more of the perspective of the xenomorph, which is something that we've never really seen a whole lot of. You might actually in Alien 3, I feel like you get a little bit of it, but pretty decent teaser reveal. I'm gonna try and keep my exposure to this show relatively limited because I loved Alien Romulus. I'm getting to the point where I don't want a lot of trailers for things. I love the poster of Alien Earth with the xenomorph and like the top portion of its head being kind of a side portion of Earth, like the crust of Earth. So, Corey, where's your anticipation at for this show? Are you going to kind of be sitting down week to week to watch this? Did you watch the teaser trailer? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I saw the teaser during it was either like the AFC or NFC Championship game last week.
Both dog shit. Both horrible results.
Yeah, we're not thrilled about it. Yeah, we'll get into the Super Bowl maybe next week.
After we kill ourselves, yeah.
Yeah, right.
If the Chiefs win, I'm not going to say I'm going to kill myself, but if the Chiefs win, I'm going to be very upset.
We're going to be very sad.
Very sad.
But yeah, no, I think the trailer looks cool. I'm excited for the concept of the show and Noah Hawley. I'm actually lacking on a lot of his stuff. I've heard Legion and Fargo are both great, and he's very heavily involved in both of those. I think he created both of them.
Anything that comes from like the FX production,
Yeah.
I'm like, you're probably good. Like I need to go out and see Shogun still, so like there's a lot of shows within that like Hulu made by FX like realm that I'm like, oh, like I consistently hear about Fargo and how every season just is something special in and of itself. So maybe I'll go back and watch all of Fargo, and maybe I probably won't watch all of Legion before Alien Earth, but I am excited for Alien Earth.
Yeah, no, it looks cool. Just a quick little teaser, but I'm excited for it. Moving into some Scream 7 news. We've got Scrisevenum. We've got Scott Foley coming back, who played Roman in Scream 3, who I believe he was Sidney Prescott's like half brother or something. Some of the like family
lineage
things, yeah, it's a little confusing. Matthew Lillard also rumored to be coming back as Stu. Stu lives, maybe. Who knows? Is it a flashback? Is it a vision? I don't know. We don't really know the specifics, but if they bring both of these characters back and they're just like, no, they're alive, it's worrying me a little bit. But we don't know what their involvement in this is. It could be a cameo. We don't know. The Scream movies, as we've said, are very consistent. I don't think there's really a bad one. The worst is Scream 3, which is still like a fun slasher horror movie. So I'm excited to see this movie still. Neve Campbell is coming back. Courtney Cox. The whole crew's coming back. Well, except for Melissa Barrera. But,
well,
except for her. But, yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic about this casting news for Scream 7.
Yeah, I love the first Scream. Scream 2 is really good. I have seen most of Scream 3 and just was like, yeah, I don't need to finish this. Scream 4 I love. Scream 5 I grew to love. And Scream 6 might be my favorite of the franchise since the original. I'm excited for a 7th Scream. I am interested to see kind of how they handle Stu, Matthew Lillard, in this film. I know, in Scream 5 we kind of had that like flashback. Skeet, is it Ulrich or Ulrich? He played what was his name? Billy in the original Scream, one of the two killers. So spoiler alert if you somehow haven't fucking seen that. But I'm interested to see how they kind of work that into the film. The Scream franchise, it's never something that like this far out I get super hyped for. It's once I start seeing the trailers, I'm like, oh yeah, this looks promising. I'll go see this. And with 5 and 6 kind of working really well for me, I am excited for a 7th one. It's just, they can announce that fucking Steve Harvey was in this movie. I wouldn't give a shit. Like, sure, cool, all right, sweet. Or Christopher Nolan's going to direct it. All right, sweet, I don't give a shit. Like, I won't care until I start seeing more of like the promo material for it. Aside from that, some promo material we did receive this past week was the long-awaited, long-delayed magazine Dreams. The trailer for that, which was released after many delays brought on by Jonathan Major's kind of current situation, which I don't know how much of that we want to really necessarily get into, but it's a movie, I didn't watch the trailer, but it's a movie I consistently have heard great things about from those who were able to see it. I know Dan Murrell talked heavily about the quality of this film, and it's kind of that awards buzz could potentially lead to Oscars, but now with its kind of like difficult situation in which it's now releasing, I'm excited that it's eventually coming out. I was really worried that they were going to just fucking shelve this movie indefinitely. So, Corey, I know you did watch the trailer. You're going to be more insightful in terms of what you actually thought of it. What are your thoughts on the Magazine Dreams trailer?
Yeah, I think, I'm, again, like you, I'm excited this movie's actually coming out. Jonathan Majors, I've heard nothing but just incredible things about his performance in this movie, and obviously the whole situation going on with him kind of derailed his career a little bit. But this one's coming out in late March, I believe it is. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I don't know that it'll be an Oscar player, just kind of with the release date, with the situation. But the trailer looks interesting. It has some Love Lies Bleeding vibes, a little bit to it, just with some of the subject matter. But excited to see that one. Another movie that we are both very excited for is The Odyssey. Every week we get some casting news. This week we added Benny Safdie, Himesh Patel, Elliot Page, Bill Irwin, Samantha Morton. I think it's easier at this point to just say who's not in this movie.
Yeah,
and
no shit.
Everybody's joining this. It looks great. I'm excited. All these people, some of them have worked with Nolan before, so he's got the relationship with them, and this movie's gonna fucking rip.
Yeah, I am scared of how good. I'm really getting worried for my expectations for this film and trying to keep them in check, because I loved Oppenheimer and I love The Odyssey. It's one of my favorite written things ever made. So going into this, hearing this cast, and just the more I hear about this movie, the more I'm my mouth gets wet, and I'm like, oh yeah, start salivating. Ayo, dude, for Christopher Nolan, ayo for sure. So I can't wait for this fucking movie. The cast eventually is gonna be half of Hollywood, what's left of Hollywood. But yeah, I can't wait for The Odyssey. Aside from that amazing movie. That I can't wait for. Looking at a movie I am surprisingly getting excited for, based on Zach Cregger's joining and his creative work, kind of what he's going to be putting into it. The director of the cult horror hit Barbarian, which we touched on earlier this show, is set to direct a new Resident Evil reboot, which I have not seen a single Resident Evil movies, because every time I see them, I think, wow, that looks like ass. So I skip them. The upcoming film will reportedly take the film franchise back to its horror roots, which I have played some of the games, so the horror roots, Resident Evil 4 is pretty great. This film will hopefully look to pay homage to the original games with more accuracy than the prior installments. Corey, do you know anything about Resident Evil? Have you watched any of the Resident Evil movies? Have you played any of the games? Are you excited about Zach Cregger's potential directorial efforts within this franchise?
I have not watched any of the movies or played the games, but I'm excited. I've always wanted to watch through them, and this will give me an opportunity to do that once this movie comes out. And Zach Cregger, like we said, I love what he did with Barbarian, so that could be really cool. I think, I'm always down for some new horror kind of stuff, so toss them in there. Why not? Yeah. A last little bit of movie news here, which is very interesting. Jake Gyllenhaal is reportedly set to star in M. Night Shyamalan's new movie, which is a supernatural romantic thriller based on an original story created by Shyamalan and best-selling novelist Nicholas Sparks, who The Notebook and shit like that, I think.
Womp womp.
Yeah. For years, and I think many people have said that M. Night Shyamalan has the potential to be a great director a lot of times, and I like a lot of his movies, actually, but he's always needed kind of another writer to come in and be like, don't do your weird Shyamalan dialogue, don't do your weird stuff. This isn't exactly what I was thinking, but I don't want to discount it because Jake Gyllenhaal's great. Mm-hmm. So I guess I just need more of what this actually means, or what the story is here. I need a trailer. I need something to just kind of get me into it a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like that critique of that weird Shyamalan dialogue has just been present for the past 20 years. In Signs, it works for me. The kids are saying weird shit. There's aliens coming. Whatever. There's things that movies in which I'm willing to forgive the weird cadence that everything's delivered and the weird dialogue. I really like Knock at the Cabin. I didn't see Trap, which I know you did. But just based on that trailer, I feel like I could see with Josh Hartnett. I'm like, I can see the Shyamalan isms within this. So yes, he does need a writer to kind of basically help him out a little bit and look over his shoulder and be like, Shyamalan, maybe a kid shouldn't fucking say that. I don't know what that means. How would they know that? I'm excited that he's pairing with someone that is a more accomplished writer. I do love The Notebook. I think that is a very well-made movie. It's interesting just to see this pairing, but regardless, Jake Gyllenhaal in anything, you got me sold. Like, I love him. He is amazing. I can't wait. Anything, if he's in it, I will likely see it opening weekend. So, can't wait. Just M. Night Shyamalan, Nicholas Sparks, TBD on that fucking pairing in heaven and or potentially hell. Anyways, thank you for sitting and having some liquor drinks with us for I believe our 14th episode of Slate Night, the Film Fan Podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram for more in-depth movie reviews and news, and subscribe to our podcast. Also, follow us on TikTok, which I know Corey knows. Are we just Slate Night, the Film Fan Podcast on TikTok?
Just Slate Night Podcast on TikTok. I've been putting some reviews, a little physical media stuff, just when I go out to Walmart and buy stuff, because that's really the only place to buy it. So, check us out on there. Definitely want to get more involved on that platform as well. But from Mason and I at Slate Night, that's a wrap.